Welcome and thank you for joining us today. We're really excited to be here and talk to you guys about how to best prioritize your sales efforts on the accounts that are going to have the most amount of impact. My name is Justin Kitagawa. I'm with HG Insights, and we are the leading provider of account-based technology intelligence, namely things like IT spend, IT install, and contract intelligence that really allow sales, marketing, and strategy teams to outsell, outmarket, and out-strategize their competition. Before we get started today, I just want to give a big shout out to Ring DNA for pulling together such an awesome group of people to be able to, again, really provide a ton of information, a ton of knowledge to today's sellers. And again, as we move into that next normal, be able to best navigate that. So again, really huge shout out to them, and we're honored to be even taking place in this. So I think a lot of sales teams are really kind of in the same scenario right now, right? Everybody is now gone remote. Everybody has their Zoom camera angles just right to provide that perfect angle. And now they're all kind of asking the same question. They're all kind of saying, well, now what? Where do I actually put my efforts? How do I actually start this? Who are the best people to go after? And that's really what we want to talk about today. And I think that's really what, again, what we're hearing a lot from our customers as well, is they're kind of wondering, well, now what should I do? And the first thing I think is to kind of recognize that, having widespread economic disruption really makes targeting difficult. It makes it difficult to tell who you should be going after. It makes it difficult to tell who you should be reaching out to first. And I think we just need to acknowledge that first in order to really be able to deal with it in a meaningful and constructive way. And again, like, this entire topic is going to be really focused on how you can prioritize your efforts to have the greatest amount of impact for your company. And again, another recognition here is that we're all in the same crowded space. So because everybody is now remote, because everybody's pretty much reliant on things like digital and social selling, it's become a very crowded and noisy environment, and you really need to be able to stand out. Again, like, if everybody's doing the same thing, if everybody's on the same playing field, you need a way to break through that noise with really clear and concise messaging, with an offering that is really targeted. And again, that's what we're going to be talking about today. Another thing I actually want to touch on first is a big shift into account-based selling and account-based marketing. So this is something that we've been hearing a lot from both our prospects and our customers, and that's that pretty much everybody, I think, has probably experimented a little bit, dipped their toe in the water with account-based sales and marketing. Now, a lot of companies are really diving in full speed, out of necessity. Again, if you're going to be trying to, break through that noise and have your offering stand out, you need to have messaging that you can really dedicate time to, dedicate effort to, dedicate resource to. You can only do that with so many accounts, right? You can't have, your entire prospect list and say, we're going to run, account-based sales against this. You need to be able to prioritize your efforts accordingly. And again, so how do you find those right accounts? That's the big question for today. How do you actually go and identify what those accounts are, who those accounts are, and start reaching out to them? And when you look about, or when you talk about, how you actually pull together a target account list, or how you prioritize your prospects, it kind of, goes back to your ideal customer profile, right? Because you want to be able to prioritize them according to how well you think they match up to your ICP. This is a great time to really revisit that. A lot of times when we talk to sales and marketing teams, their ideal customer profile, or the definition of their ideal prospect is either old or outdated, or it's something where if you ask 5 salespeople, you might get 5 different answers. If you throw in marketing, you might get a 6th. It's really important for everybody to be kind of coordinated and agree on really what the definition of your ideal customer profile is. And again, this is something where we're having customers come to us now saying, hey, you know what? We're recognizing that essentially the world has changed, the landscape has changed, and we think that our ideal customer profile and our targeting needs to change as well. Can you help us do that? So that's another way, just kind of saying, again, I think if you're going to get started in this, you really need to start with some of the assumptions that you have as a sales organization and question those and figure out whether or not those make sense now. Again, because things have changed, dramatically in the last couple months here. So I want to give an example of what I'm talking about. So here is an actual example from one of our clients, and this was their kind of traditional based ICP, right? So things are relying on things like firmographics primarily. So in this case, they defined their ideal customer profile as multinational financial services companies with over 1,000 employees and over $100 million in revenue. And it's a fair ICP. The problem is, that yielded around 2,100 accounts that they were then going to go after, and they quickly realized that that wasn't nearly as targeted as they needed it to be. If they're going to be running account-based sales programs, if they're going to be running account-based marketing programs, they needed that to be a lot more targeted. They needed that number to come down to be manageable. So that's when you start applying essentially other filters to be able to really narrow in and find that kind of laser focused set of accounts that are going to have the most revenue potential for you and your company. So we really worked with them, and again in a partnership, and we actually kind of figured out, like, well, are there certain technologies or combinations of technologies that would make a given account a better prospect for you? And they said, yeah, like companies that are running SAP but haven't quite moved to HANA yet. Like those were actually a really unique, or they had a unique offering there, and those were great prospects. So we said, okay, well, let's add that into your definitions here for your target accounts, and that brought it down to 529. And they said, wow, that's great, but can we get that down even more? And we said, yeah, well, what other types of technology, intelligence, or even initiatives that might be important to you guys? And they said, well, companies that have a multi-cloud strategy, do well for us, or we can do well with them. We said, okay, well, let's add that in there. And again, this is another layer where we can actually pick out if a company has a specific strategy in place based on the technologies that they use. Us internally at HG, we do really well with companies who are data driven and have account-based strategies in place. So we can look for certain solutions that companies buy to help them do those things, and that really gives us a clear window into kind of the strategies, or we call the strategic intent of an organization. But anyways, back to this example. This is, that got them down to 412. And we said, well, we can actually, do you one better here, because we also have granular IT spend intelligence. So when we add that in, we said, okay, well, let's actually just focus on the accounts that are spending at least $5 million in cloud ERP. And that brought that down to 96 companies. And they were like, this is perfect. This is a manageable number that we can actually divide up, between our sales reps. We can build a strategy here, and we can execute that strategy. And we actually believe that we can, make a huge dent in our numbers by just going after these accounts again in a much more strategic and coordinated way. I do want to add, this is something that they did in collaboration with their marketing team. Sales and marketing alignment is absolutely critical right now. So, again, as we talk about how to best prioritize your efforts, I would also add that it's important to bring in your marketing team so that you can have that coordinated effort. If you're going to stand out, if you're going to rise above the rest of the noise there, having that collaborative approach, having that kind of multi-channel approach can make a huge difference. So that's something I would definitely suggest as well. And something that our most successful customers are coming to us and telling us, saying, hey, one of the big benefits of going through this exercise with you is actually we now have a better relationship with our sales and marketing team, between our sales and marketing teams. Which again is something that we hadn't really sought out to do, but it's something that was an added benefit, and they're actually just working better and actually selling more. So it's another kind of great result here. So again, I want to just kind of talk about how companies can actually go and build the definition of their ideal prospects, and I do think it starts with that firmographic layer. I think it's really important to use that as a foundation. So again, this would be things like annual revenue, number of employees, industry, some potential persona information. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second, but those are gonna help kind of define roughly who your target accounts should be. But again, I think you do need to go beyond that, because just relying on firmographics, typically just doesn't yield the results that it used to. Again, especially if you have all of your competitors doing the same thing, or everybody else in the marketplace kind of using that same kind of rough definition. You want to get a lot more targeted, right? You want to have that laser focused set of accounts that you can reach out to with a laser focused message. So again, adding that technology install layer to this, brings you a little bit closer, right? Then you can start adding in the IT spend piece. And again, these two work really well together to identify, not only whether or not a company has the right technology mix for you. And again, this can be whether they're using a weaker competitor of yours, or they're using a product that integrates with yours, or they're using products that indicate that they have a particular strategy in place that you align with very well. Again, the technology piece really helps. And then you add the spend on top of it. You can then say, well, I also want to see the accounts that are spending over a certain amount. So accounts that can, essentially afford my solution, or that can buy my solution and can actually grow. So if you have more of a land and expand strategy, you want to make sure that there's room for that expansion. And again, that's where the IT spend intelligence really comes into play. Another piece that a lot of our clients add on top is the intent piece. And that's really good as like the icing on top of the cake of, okay, well, now that you have a really good definition of what your ideal customer profile is, or what your ideal target is, you can actually then add on that additional layer of intent and say, well, let's start off with those who are really actually looking for a solution right now, and reach out to them first. But I think it's really the IT spend, the technology installs, and the firmographics that really are going to form the basis for your targeting. And the intent piece there is, again, kind of a last pass filter to figure out where you should potentially start off with first. So we have a fun little kind of model here that we always like to say, which is that your pipeline is really equal to your propensity to buy multiplied by your revenue potential. And what we mean by that is, again, when we're talking about identifying who our target accounts are, it's really important to factor in these two pieces. You want to be able to factor in the propensity to buy. So you want to figure out who are the accounts, again, that are most likely to adopt your solution, or you're going to have a shorter sales cycle with maybe. But you need to add that potential piece in there as well, the revenue potential. And again, that's where the IT spend piece comes in, being able to say, well, I want to focus on the accounts that have the highest revenue potential for me, right? That's a pretty obvious thing to most salespeople. You want to go with where the money is. The big thing that's important to remember here is, again, you have to have both of these. We talk to clients. We actually just had a customer roundtable, and one of the roundtable participants said, when we first started looking at our target accounts program, the first list of target accounts we got was really just the list of the largest accounts. It didn't factor in any of that propensity piece there. So it was really just the potential. And without that propensity piece, it's kind of like some of these accounts might be wishful thinking. And don't get me wrong, it's great to have those moonshot accounts out there. But if you're looking to really be data driven and figure out who the accounts are that are going to have the most amount of revenue impact for your company, you do need to add that propensity layer in. So both of those really play nicely off of each other to get you the account list that's going to be, again, the most impactful for your company. Another thing that's really important here when we talk about focusing on the right accounts is it's not just having the right accounts in your target accounts program, but it's also figuring out how to action on those accounts. And that's where territory optimization and prioritization come in a lot. This is something, again, I would suggest a lot of companies actually kind of go through this exercise right now of possibly even reshuffling some things. When you look at your territories, a lot of times companies organize them and saying, hey, we're going to have equal territories here where everybody gets, let's just say 100 accounts. And the problem is that that's sort of a flawed way of looking at things, and it can lead to some odd results. So again, let's just say, here's an example here. I have my 4 reps and they each have 100 accounts. But again, when you start layering on additional data points, so if I start layering on the IT spend piece here, you might actually see that the available revenue between these reps is different. And that can be a problem because, as we all know, you know, if your territory is fairly large, you're not going to be able to get to all those accounts, right? You're not going to be able to service those in an equal way. And if you add that in, you might end up having reps that are essentially overloaded with revenue potential and some that are underloaded. And again, that's suboptimal. You're not going to be able to extract the maximum amount of value out of that kind of set of territories if that's the case. Again, because you're going to have some accounts that are not worked. So being able to optimize those territories and really remove the subjectivity piece out of it allows you to create, you know, truly equitable territories. So everything is fair, which everybody loves. But it's also great from a sales management perspective, because you can also then better compare reps. You can say, well, this rep is more productive than this other rep here. And it's not just that they had a more productive territory, it's that, you know, that rep is actually doing something different or doing something better. So again, this is another awesome kind of side benefit to having this type of intelligence, is you can really start optimizing your sales territories, optimizing your target account list, you know, between your reps, to make sure that you're getting the most amount of value there. The other piece that I wanted to touch on is the prioritization piece. It would be great if territories all looked like this, right? And it was just kind of like, oh, I know exactly where the value is. To too many sales teams out there, their territories are a little bit more spotty, right? So their reps spend a lot of time analyzing their territories, going through their account list, even their target accounts, and trying to figure out, okay, well, where are the bright spots here, or the brighter spots, and where should I focus my time and time and attention? And that really is what all this is about: is focusing your time and attention on, you know, the accounts that are going to have the most impact. So again, once you have that IT spend information and the propensity information to kind of build out that equation there, you can really start, you know, building out really more accurate account scoring models that allow you to then say, well, I want to stack rank my accounts, and I want to focus on the accounts that have, you know, the highest revenue potential and the best propensity to buy, and focus on those first in my territory. And those are the ones that I'm going to go after. And again, it's an awesome thing to see a rep, you know, come to work and not have to worry about, like, am I reaching out to the right account? You know, should I be focusing somewhere else? It's like, no, I have a clear and concise picture of, like, this is who I should be going after. This is why. So again, kind of having that transparency behind the scoring model. But when you see a rep do that, they're that much more productive, because they're going into essentially all their activities that much more confident that they're going after the right people, the right accounts. You know, again, to have the most amount of revenue impact. But again, this is not just me saying this. So I mentioned before that we had just done a customer roundtable, and I wanted to actually bring in a couple kind of quotes or success points that they brought up. And the first was, 292% Q1 attainment. This was a story that one of them told about one of their sales reps who was kind of the guinea pig, so to speak, of really taking an approach that was driven by technology intelligence to drive or determine their territories and their prioritization kind of scheme there. They worked with this rep, you know, a lot to figure out, okay, well, if we can factor all these things in, the IT spend, the IT install, the firmographics, and the intent, who are the best accounts to go after? And they were able to achieve, again, you know, almost 300% of their Q1 number, really, while the rest of the world was, to some extent, you know, kind of falling apart. So this is, you know, this would be an insane accomplishment in any Q1. Being Q1 in 2020, I would say this is, you know, really an unbelievable accomplishment. And again, you know, hats off to our client there. We were happy to be a part of this success. But again, this is just kind of illustrating that this isn't just us saying this. You know, this is our customers are actually being able to see this value, and they're able to take this intelligence and action it in a really meaningful way to drive revenue. Another kind of fun quote that we got from one of our customers was talking about their old way of finding target accounts and prioritization, and their new way. And he described it as, the old way was like having a compass, right? You could kind of tell you were going in the right direction, but it was maybe a little bit difficult to tell exactly where you are and where you should be. And that once you start utilizing technology intelligence to really figure out who your target accounts are, it's much more like using a GPS, where you know exactly where to go. And again, that's just kind of a cool quote there. Another thing to factor in here, and I know we touched on this a little bit with the expansion piece, but finding better targets, having better prospects makes you actually have better customers. If you can find the right accounts that have room for expansion, that's awesome. There's also another side benefit, which one of our customers has brought up to us, which is, hey, if I'm selling to the right accounts, this actually, in the long term is better for the business because they are more aligned with us. It takes less or costs less to service them. They require fewer customizations. And again, there's always the added benefit of like, they're also a lot more likely to expand with you. They're much more open to upsell and cross-sell conversations. Again, if you're actually picking the right prospects and the right targets to begin with. Another added piece of this is, the right message. You need to have the right message here, and that's what's so cool about having a more targeted account set is you can actually develop a message that is super contextual. Context is everything when you're reaching out to somebody. You need to be able to understand where they are in order to really and accurately, articulate the value of your product or solution, right? We did a webinar with Corporate Visions, and we talked a lot about just how important context is, and being able to understand, how somebody's currently operating and how you can move them from their current to their future state. Back to the previous example we gave of the kind of targeting pyramid, and if you were just to focus on, let's just say the persona piece of it, and you say, well, IT manager, senior IT manager at a financial services company is, they're likely facing, X, Y, and Z, and that's their context. Being able to drill down a lot more directly and say, well, actually, an IT manager at a financial services company who's using SAP but hasn't moved to HANA, has a multi-cloud strategy, and has a budget around this much for their cloud ERP system, that's all of a sudden a very different picture. It's a lot clearer. And again, like you'll be able to kind of go into a situation, really understanding the landscape, understanding the scenario, and again, understanding the context and being able to articulate your value a lot more. Doing that again requires you to go kind of beyond the business card. A lot of people tend to target personas based on things like job title, again, industry, number of employees. We really push our customers, our clients, to go beyond that and really try to define their kind of groupings or their cohorts based on, again, the full context there. So you might find that IT managers that are using SAP but not HANA across multiple industries actually behave a lot more similarly than an IT manager in finance versus an IT manager in manufacturing. They might actually operate completely differently from each other or the same with each other. What's really important is to add that extra piece in there of what technologies they're using or what their context is. That's going to get you a lot closer to what their actual situation is. And again, without understanding that, it's really difficult to create a message that's going to resonate. And again, when you talk to salespeople about what they're trying to pitch, they need to be able to pitch the value, right? And the value is essentially the delta between their current state and the future state that you can help them achieve. And if you don't know their current state, it's pretty difficult to figure out what that value might be. So again, this is just an added layer that you can bring in. So I know we've covered a ton of stuff. I think if I could boil it down into three things, I would say that the most important things to kind of keep in mind when you're trying to build target accounts or figure out who you should be going out to as we kind of move into the next normal, it's really to revisit your ideal customer profile or your ideal kind of targeting criteria to optimize for revenue. So don't just optimize for just the largest accounts. Don't just optimize for the accounts that are easy to sell to, but might actually not have enough budget or room to grow. And then again, the importance of finding targeting criteria that actually helps you build a better message and helps you stand out. Because at the end of the day, if you're just using your targeting criteria to get down to a smaller set of accounts, but you're not really able to derive any sort of contextual messaging based on that, you've kind of just limited the number of accounts you're going after, and you haven't really taken advantage of the benefits of focusing on a smaller set of accounts. And that is, again, being able to really contextualize what you're doing, contextualize your outreach. And again, that's where you're going to have the most amount of success. All right, so I think we've been getting some Q&A, so I'm going to jump over there and we'll answer some of your questions.